I knew I was going to meet him when I was coming to the game, and that's like one of my idols, like the GOAT to me. So he's my favorite player of all time.
Your dream come true. You've made so many dreams come true. State Farm knew it had been some time since you'd seen, and like a good neighbor, State Farm.
Caitlin Clark recently revealed the 6 players who shaped the way she sees basketball, and honestly, some of the names make perfect sense, while one of them completely caught fans off guard. One inspired her fearless logo shooting. Another showed her how to control an offense without forcing the game. And the player Clark calls the greatest ever is not the name most people expected to hear. When you connect all 6 influences together, you start to understand how Clark became one of the most unique guards basketball has ever seen. Growing up in Iowa, Clark did not just watch games for fun. She studied them. She watched legends from the WNBA, NBA superstars, and even college players who changed the way she thought about scoring. Clark once explained that even if you're not intentionally copying players, you still absorb parts of their game every time you watch them. Over time, those influences mixed together and turned into the version of Caitlin Clark the basketball world knows today. One of the clearest influences in her game is Kevin Durant. Clark has never hidden how much she admires the way Durant scores from literally anywhere on the floor. Durant's offensive style is impossible to predict because he can attack from the perimeter, mid-range, the post, or in transition without changing pace. Clark plays with a very similar mindset. If defenders back away from her, she launches deep threes without hesitation. If they close out too hard, she drives into the paint, absorbs contact, and either finishes herself or creates an open look for teammates. Like Durant, she uses her size against smaller defenders and constantly forces defenses to make impossible choices. It is not about copying his moves exactly. It is about adopting the mentality of becoming impossible to guard. Then there is Pete Maravich, one of the most creative players basketball has ever seen. Before Clark eventually passed his legendary NCAA scoring record, she spent years studying the flair and freedom Maravich played with. His no-look passes, behind-the-back assists, and fearless style made basketball feel entertaining in a way fans had never seen before. You can clearly spot pieces of that influence in Clark's game today. Whether it is a cross-court pass fired before the defense even reacts or a deep step-back 3 taken with complete confidence, Clark plays with the same sense of imagination. When she broke Maravich's scoring record, it felt bigger than just another statistic. It felt symbolic, like one generation of basketball creativity passing the torch to another. The biggest surprise for many fans came when Clark named LeBron James as the greatest player ever, not because of championships or highlight dunks, but because of how he controls every possession. Clark admires the way LeBron sees the floor like a chessboard, constantly reading defenders and making the smartest decision available. That influence shows up every time Clark orchestrates an offense. She can score 30 points if needed, but she often prefers making the right basketball play instead. Pulling defenders into the lane before firing a perfect pass to an open shooter is pure LeBron-style basketball. Clark's ability to balance scoring with elite playmaking comes directly from studying players who elevate everyone around them. Another major influence was Stephen Curry. This one probably surprises nobody. Curry completely changed basketball by normalizing logo threes and impossible shot making, and Clark embraced that freedom early. Watching Curry gave her confidence to shoot from distances most players would never even consider. Those logo threes that became her trademark at Iowa were built from a belief Curry created across the basketball world, that great shooters should never limit themselves. Clark has also spoken about learning from Diana Taurasi, especially her toughness and competitiveness. Taurasi built her career by playing with emotion, confidence, and zero fear of big moments. Clark carries that same edge onto the court, whether she is hitting huge shots or responding to pressure from opposing defenses. There is a visible confidence that mirrors Taurasi's mentality. Finally, Clark has praised Sue Bird for showing how elite point guards control tempo and create opportunities for teammates. Bird mastered the art of running an offense without forcing anything, and that influence is easy to recognize in Clark's passing vision and patience. When you combine Durant's scoring versatility, Maravich's creativity, LeBron's floor control, Curry's shooting range, Taurasi's fire, and Bird's playmaking intelligence, the result starts to look exactly like Caitlin Clark. Not a copy of any one player, but a blend of all of them transformed into something completely her own.
I knew I was going to meet him when I was coming to the game, and that's like one of my idols. Like LeBron is the GOAT to me, so I don't know, it's just like a crazy moment where I got to meet him in the back, and for him to go out of his way and like wish me luck on the season. And he really does follow the WNBA, and he watches and he loves and appreciates basketball, and he loves and appreciates the way the Fever and my teammates play. And I mean, it's just really cool. I saw that. I didn't see it before the game, but obviously a lot of people had said it to me after the game. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I thought it was kind of fake at first, but he's my favorite player of all time. I mean, you never know in today's world, I guess. I didn't know. I was like, wait, is this actually LeBron James? I knew the picture was real because I knew that was me, but yeah, it was pretty incredible. Like, I mean,
The connection between LeBron James and Caitlin Clark has become one of the coolest cross-generation stories in basketball. The public shout-outs, the supportive messages, and that viral moment where Clark admitted she had to look twice at her phone to make sure LeBron had actually contacted her all showed the same thing. Greatness recognizes greatness. One superstar who carried impossible expectations for 2 decades, seeing something familiar in the next face of basketball. Both dealing with enormous pressure, while somehow still smiling when the spotlight gets brightest. What Clark learned most from LeBron was not just scoring or flashy passes. It was understanding that the most dangerous scorer on the floor is often the player who controls when to score. LeBron has spent his entire career dissecting defenses, forcing opponents into impossible choices, and then punishing whatever decision they make. Clark plays with that same balance. She can hit logo threes whenever she wants, but her real power comes from manipulating the defense before making the right read. Sometimes she attacks, sometimes she creates. That control over the game is pure LeBron influence. Then comes a player that surprised almost everybody. Jimmer Fredette. Long before Clark became a national superstar, she was a little kid completely obsessed with Jimmer's legendary run at BYU. She watched every game she could, replayed his YouTube highlights endlessly, memorized his step-back jumper, and even wore the famous Teach Me How to Jimmer shirt. Jimmer's NBA career never matched the hype, but his college career changed how young guards thought about shooting. He made impossible deep-range shots feel normal. He showed smaller guards they did not need permission to fire from anywhere on the court. Years later, Clark finally met him during an episode of Sue Bird's basketball series. Sue Bird brought Jimmer onto the court for a three-point contest with Clark inside Carver Hawkeye Arena. Bird called out ridiculous shooting spots while the two launched shots from impossible distances. Clark even knocked down an out-of-bounds attempt before joking that it was cool hanging out with the two people who invented the three-point shot. Calm, funny, confident. Classic Caitlin Clark. Jimmer did not give Clark a blueprint. He gave her freedom. Freedom to stretch defenses farther than anyone expected and treat logo shots like standard offense instead of desperation. Of course, Stephen Curry belongs on the list too. Nearly every part of Clark's long-range style connects back to Curry's influence. The quick pull-ups, the off-ball movement, the fearless confidence from deep. Steph transformed basketball by making 30-foot shots feel routine. Clark took that same mentality and turned it into a weapon across women's basketball. But before the logo threes and sold-out arenas, Clark's favorite player growing up was always Maya Moore. She admired everything about Moore's game: the scoring, the defense, the toughness, and most importantly, the winning. Clark studied how Moore could dominate every area of the floor while still making the game look effortless. That complete, unselfish style became a major part of who Clark is today.
Knew it had been some time since you'd seen Maya, and like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Maya Moore.
oh my gosh.
Senior night in March 2024 became one of the most emotional moments of Caitlin Clark's career. Carver Hawkeye Arena was already roaring when suddenly Maya Moore walked onto the court. Clark instantly froze, smiled, and looked overwhelmed as the crowd exploded. The hug between the two stars felt bigger than basketball. It was one generation honoring another in real time. Later, during an appearance on Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, Clark made sure to recognize the women who helped build the sport long before the sold-out arenas and national spotlight arrived. She mentioned legends like Lisa Leslie, Sheryl Swoopes, Cynthia Cooper, Dawn Staley, and Maya Moore herself. For Clark, that moment was never about publicity. It was about respect. Respect for the players who carried women's basketball through years of small salaries, limited exposure, and tiny crowds so future stars could thrive. Maya Moore was not just Clark's favorite player growing up. She became the standard for greatness. Compete every possession, dominate the biggest moments, and elevate everyone around you.
Maya Moore is your favorite player. In a game to 11 against prime Maya Moore, how many points?
11-0, Maya Moore. for sure.
You're not scoring one bucket.
I'm not scoring. She's blocking me.
Clark once watched Maya more the same way young players now watch her. She wore Jimmer Fredette shirts before her own jerseys started disappearing from store shelves. She broke Pistol Pete Maravich's scoring record while carrying the same fearless joy that made Pete unforgettable. She studies the way LeBron James controls an offense, borrows Kevin Durant's ability to score from literally anywhere on the floor, and rides the shooting revolution Stephen Curry created like it was built for her generation to take even further. That is the beautiful cycle of basketball. Influence never really ends. It just keeps moving forward. 10 years from now, some young star is going to step in front of a microphone and say, "Caitlin Clark made me believe I could do this." That moment is already coming, because what Clark represents goes beyond highlights and logo threes. She represents possibility. She made young players believe creativity, confidence, deep shooting, and playmaking could all exist in the same player without limitations. Now the fun part becomes figuring out whose influence shows up most in her game. Some fans see Curry every time she launches from the logo. Others see LeBron in the way she manipulates defenses and creates for teammates. There are flashes of Pistol Pete in her creativity, hints of KD in her all-around scoring package, pieces of Maya Moore in her complete game, and Jimmer's fearless attitude every time she pulls up from ridiculous range without hesitation. And if you really want to understand Clark's game, watch for 3 specific things in her next matchup. First, pay attention to what happens after she gives the ball up. When Clark touches the ball a second time in the same possession, something dangerous usually follows, either a deep three or a cross-court pass that bends the defense out of shape. Second, watch how defenses pick her up near half-court. Teams are terrified of giving her space, and that pressure creates open backdoor cuts and slipping lanes for teammates all game long. Third, focus on plays immediately after timeouts. That is where her LeBron-like basketball IQ shows itself the most. She reads the floor 2 steps ahead and makes decisions that feel planned before the defense even reacts. The story starts with Maya Moore hugging a young Caitlin Clark and ends with Clark embracing every part of basketball herself. Scoring, passing, rebounding, leading, and elevating everyone around her. That is why no single comparison fully works. She is not just the women's Steph Curry. She is not Ponytail Pete. She is not LeBron with deeper range. She is the first Caitlin Clark, built from pieces of basketball history, while writing a completely new story of her own.